Welcome back to the Crypto Intellect, everybody. Holy smokes, this market is absolutely losing its mind right now, and XRP holders are sitting there asking the exact same question I'm asking myself tonight. What in the world is President Trump signaling right now? Because this latest development does not feel normal at all. We've got Trump suddenly canceling major personal plans, the SEC delaying crypto-related action again, a brand new Federal Reserve chairman officially stepping into power, and the crypto market reacting like it just got hit with a surprise punch out of nowhere. XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything started wobbling after these headlines dropped, and you can feel the uncertainty spreading across the market. But at the same time, underneath all the fear and confusion, there's this strange energy building. It almost feels like something massive is brewing behind the scenes. And look, I'm not here to create panic or hype for no reason, but when you connect all these dots together, you can understand why XRP holders are paying very close attention tonight. Because the timing of all this is extremely unusual, and markets hate uncertainty more than anything else in the world. Now let's talk about the Trump situation, because this is where things started getting really weird. Reports started circulating that President Trump officially canceled plans involving a trip to his golf club, and even decided not to attend his own son's wedding festivities during Memorial Day weekend because of government-related circumstances. And look, regardless of your politics, people are naturally going to ask questions when a sitting president changes major personal plans like that during an already tense global environment. Traders notice these things immediately. Investors notice them immediately. And the market starts trying to price in possibilities before facts even come out. That's why you saw this sudden nervous energy hit crypto so fast. People started wondering if there's a geopolitical situation developing behind closed doors, if some kind of economic announcement is coming, or if there's a major policy move being prepared. Nobody fully knows yet, and that uncertainty itself creates volatility. XRP holders especially know how sensitive this market is to headlines because crypto can go from green candles to complete chaos in minutes. And honestly, tonight feels exactly like one of those moments where everyone is trying to figure out what happens next before the next headline drops. What made this even more interesting is that many investors immediately started comparing this situation to previous geopolitical moments, where major leaders unexpectedly changed schedules before important global developments unfolded. Now again, I'm not saying we know exactly what's happening because we don't, but markets are built on psychology, anticipation, and fear. That's the reality. When traders see unusual behavior from political leaders, especially during economically sensitive periods, they react first and ask questions later. That's basically what happened to crypto today. XRP saw selling pressure almost immediately after these discussions started spreading online. Bitcoin pulled back. Ethereum pulled back. The entire market basically moved together like a giant risk-off reaction. And what's crazy is the stock market itself actually held up fairly well overall during most of the trading session. So crypto clearly got hit harder emotionally by the uncertainty than traditional markets did. That tells you something important right there. Crypto traders are still extremely reactive to sudden news shocks, and XRP holders know this better than almost anybody, because XRP has spent years dealing with regulatory uncertainty already. Then we got another major headline involving the SEC, and this is where things became even more frustrating for crypto investors. The SEC reportedly delayed progress connected to tokenized stock exemptions after feedback from exchanges and market participants. And depending on who you ask, this was either a smart, cautious move or another example of regulators slowing down innovation when the industry desperately wants clarity. The market definitely didn't like it at first. You could literally see the reaction happen almost instantly as crypto prices started dipping across the board. And honestly, this has become one of the biggest emotional triggers in crypto markets lately. Every single time there's a delay, investors immediately assume the worst. They assume adoption is slowing. They assume regulators are dragging their feet again. They assume institutions are going to wait longer before entering the space. And when fear spreads fast enough, you get these sharp pullbacks that feel bigger than the actual news itself. XRP holders especially understand how exhausting these regulatory delays can feel, because XRP has basically lived inside regulatory headlines for years now. So when traders saw another SEC-related delay hit the news cycle, a lot of people immediately hit the sell button before even fully reading the details. But here's the thing, a lot of people are missing tonight. Sometimes delays don't actually mean rejection. Sometimes they mean regulators are trying to build a framework that won't completely implode later. That's the part the market usually ignores during emotional reactions. Tokenized stocks could eventually become one of the biggest bridges between traditional finance and crypto. We're talking about potentially massive liquidity entering blockchain ecosystems over time. So yes, traders got nervous today because they wanted immediate progress, but long-term, this conversation continuing at all is still incredibly important for the industry. XRP holders should understand this especially well because utility and institutional adoption have always been part of the XRP narrative. If tokenization becomes a major global trend later in this cycle, assets connected to fast settlement systems and financial infrastructure could benefit significantly. The problem is that markets don't always reward patience in the short term. Instead, traders react emotionally to every headline. And that's why today felt like another one of those classic crypto overreactions where fear moves faster than logic for a few hours. Now let's get into the Federal Reserve situation because this is another gigantic story flying under the radar right now. It is officially confirmed that Kevin Walsh has now stepped into the role of Federal Reserve Chairman, and investors everywhere are trying to figure out exactly what this means for interest rates, liquidity, inflation, and ultimately risk assets like crypto. The Federal Reserve controls one of the biggest levers in the entire global financial system. When investors think rates are staying high longer, risky assets usually struggle. When investors believe cuts are coming, markets often rally aggressively. So naturally, crypto traders immediately started asking whether this new leadership could change the direction of monetary policy moving forward. During his remarks, Walsh focused heavily on stability, excellence, national interest, and facing challenges ahead. Very polished speech, very measured tone. But markets care less about speeches and more about one question: will liquidity improve or not? Because right now, crypto desperately wants easier financial conditions to truly break out again. And of course, crypto Twitter immediately exploded with jokes about Trump whispering cut rates into the new chairman's ear during the ceremony. You already know how social media works. The memes started instantly, but underneath the jokes, there's actually a serious conversation happening here. Inflation remains sticky in certain parts of the economy, yet parts of the stock market continue hitting strong levels despite high borrowing costs. Some analysts believe the Fed could still pivot later this year if economic weakness starts showing up more clearly. Others think rate cuts are still far away and markets are getting way too optimistic. And right now, that disagreement is creating huge uncertainty across all financial markets. XRP holders should pay attention because crypto often reacts violently to changes in liquidity expectations. If markets believe easier monetary policy is eventually coming, crypto could absolutely catch a powerful second wave. But if inflation stays stubborn and the Fed remains aggressive, then risk assets may continue struggling to gain momentum consistently. That's why every speech, every comment, and every policy signal matters so much right now. What's fascinating is that while crypto continues looking shaky at times, the stock market has actually shown surprising resilience recently. We've seen dips get bought aggressively over and over again. Companies continue posting stronger than expected earnings in several sectors despite inflation pressure. Meanwhile, crypto keeps trying to rally only to get smacked back down by negative headlines or regulatory uncertainty. It almost feels like the crypto market is playing a non-stop game of whack-a-mole lately. Every time Bitcoin starts looking strong, some new fear suddenly appears. Every time XRP starts building momentum, another macro headline drops. And that's emotionally exhausting for investors who expected crypto to already be flying higher by now. But this is also where patience becomes incredibly important. Markets move in cycles. Sentiment shifts. Liquidity rotates. Sometimes crypto lags traditional markets before suddenly exploding upward later. We've seen that happen before, and experienced investors understand that emotionally chasing every daily move usually ends badly. A lot of newer investors are learning a difficult lesson right now, and that lesson is diversification matters. When one market struggles, another market can sometimes outperform dramatically. We've seen periods where crypto completely dominated everything else, and we've also seen periods where traditional equities recovered faster while crypto lagged behind. That's why smart investors constantly talk about balance. XRP holders who diversified across multiple sectors probably feel far less emotional right now than people who went all in on one single asset expecting instant riches overnight. And look, everybody has different strategies. Some people love aggressive crypto exposure. Some people prefer dividend stocks. Some people focus on real estate or businesses. The important thing is building a structure you can actually handle emotionally during volatile periods. Because if your portfolio keeps you awake every night, you're probably carrying more risk than you can realistically tolerate. And honestly, that emotional side of investing is something people don't talk about enough. Everybody loves posting profits online during bull markets, but nobody likes discussing the stress that comes with volatility. XRP holders know this feeling better than most communities, because XRP has gone through brutal cycles of hype, lawsuits, fear, and explosive rallies all within a few years. That creates emotional fatigue. Some investors can handle huge swings easily, others can't. And there's nothing wrong with recognizing your own limits. One of the biggest mistakes people make is building portfolios they psychologically cannot manage during difficult periods. Then when markets pull back hard, they panic sell at the worst possible moment. That's why understanding yourself matters almost as much as understanding the market itself. Risk management isn't just numbers on a chart. It's emotional survival during uncertainty. What's really interesting tonight, though, is that despite all the fear, XRP itself actually held up relatively better compared to some expectations. Yes, it dropped alongside the broader market, but it wasn't some catastrophic collapse. In fact, XRP continues showing signs that buyers are still paying attention during dips. That doesn't guarantee anything, of course, but it does suggest there's still underlying interest in the asset, despite all the macro noise. And remember, XRP holders have been conditioned over years to expect volatility tied to regulation and market sentiment. So today's pullback, while frustrating, isn't exactly unfamiliar territory. The bigger question is whether crypto can regain momentum once some of this uncertainty settles down. Because if macro conditions improve even slightly, while regulatory pressure eases over time, XRP could absolutely benefit from renewed confidence returning to the sector. Another thing investors should keep watching is institutional sentiment. Institutions don't usually react emotionally the same way retail traders do. They often use periods of fear and uncertainty to quietly position themselves over time. That doesn't mean they buy every dip blindly, but it does mean they think in longer time horizons than most retail investors. And institutions continue exploring blockchain technology, tokenization, digital settlement systems, and crypto infrastructure even while short-term market volatility scares people away. That's important, because while retail traders focus heavily on daily price candles, bigger financial players often focus more on long-term transformation trends. XRP's connection to payment infrastructure and cross-border settlement discussions keeps it relevant in those conversations whether critics like it or not. So while the market may feel frustrating right now, the broader evolution of digital finance is still happening underneath the surface. At the same time, nobody should ignore the risks either. Crypto remains one of the most volatile sectors in the world. Headlines move prices violently. Regulatory uncertainty still exists. Macroeconomic conditions remain unpredictable. And geopolitical tensions can create sudden shockwaves across all financial markets instantly. That's why blindly assuming every dip guarantees immediate recovery can also become dangerous. Smart investing requires balancing optimism with realism. XRP holders need to stay informed without becoming emotionally consumed by every rumor floating around online. Because social media especially loves turning uncertainty into maximum drama within minutes. One vague headline becomes 10 conspiracy theories before lunch. And unfortunately, that emotional chaos often causes investors to make irrational decisions they later regret. What I personally find most fascinating about this entire situation is the timing of everything happening at once. Trump headlines, SEC delays, Fed leadership changes, market volatility, crypto weakness, all colliding during the same period. Even if none of these stories individually ends up becoming earth-shattering, the combination creates an atmosphere where traders feel uneasy. And uneasy markets tend to overreact to almost everything temporarily. But eventually, markets always search for clarity. Once investors better understand the policy direction, regulatory environment, and economic outlook, trends usually become more stable again. The challenge right now is that we're still inside the uncertainty phase, where nobody fully knows which direction things will break next. And that's exactly why emotions are running so high among XRP holders tonight. The good news is that crypto has survived uncertainty many times before. People forget how many times the market has been declared dead over the years. Then suddenly sentiment changes, liquidity returns, and everything moves higher faster than expected. That doesn't mean every project succeeds, obviously, but it does show how quickly narratives can shift once momentum returns. XRP especially has experienced some unbelievable sentiment swings throughout its history. One month people say it's finished forever. Then another month everybody suddenly becomes bullish again, after one major legal or market development. That's just the reality of crypto. It's emotional, fast-moving, and constantly evolving. Investors who survive long-term usually learn how to stay calm during the chaos instead of getting emotionally destroyed by every red candle. And at the end of the day, that's really what tonight comes down to. We've got a market filled with uncertainty, major political headlines creating speculation, regulatory delays frustrating investors, and a brand new Federal Reserve chairman entering one of the most important economic roles on Earth. Naturally, XRP holders are paying close attention because all of these developments could eventually influence liquidity, regulation, adoption, and overall market sentiment moving forward. Nobody has every answer right now. Anyone pretending they know exactly what happens next is probably lying to you. But what we can do is stay informed, stay patient, and avoid making emotional decisions based purely on panic headlines. Because in markets like this, emotional reactions often become the biggest enemy of long-term success. So keep your eyes open, XRP holders, because the next few weeks could end up being extremely important for crypto markets overall. We're entering one of those periods where headlines can move billions of dollars within minutes, and sentiment can flip unbelievably fast. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Do you think Trump's sudden schedule changes mean something bigger is coming? Do you think the SEC delays hurt crypto in the short term? And what are your expectations for this new Federal Reserve leadership moving forward? Don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Intellect, smash that like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Thank you for watching, stay safe out there, and like I always say, let's make a lot of money.